Hi, I'm Megan Mason, and this is my Leading with a Moral Compass presentation. So, a moral compass has 2 points, the right and the wrong. We look at our compass with a north being the right way, the south being the wrong way, and the east and west is that line that we never want to come close to. Moral compasses are what we have to live with, and we want to live those with integrity, especially as school leaders. Integrity reflects as a school leader is key because it is when we automatically can make decisions that align with our moral compass and we know what is wrong and what is right. Um, if we as a leader need to understand that our decisions impact a lot. And when we become leaders, especially in a school setting, our personal lives are no longer our own, and that everybody wants to know what our thoughts and our moral compasses are. So, how are compasses developed? They are sharpened values and principles of how we live. So, this can be shaped through cultural beliefs, personal experiences we go through, self reflection, and even on the basis of religion and policy documents. And that could be like in Christianity, there are the Ten Commandments, and then policy documents like the rights of humans that are out there and laid in document form that shapes people's morals and their beliefs. As a leader, we must follow 5 important guidelines when having our moral compasses. First, we must put others first. Our actions don't affect us. We must look at the school and our community as a whole and how what we decide can and will affect others, positively or negatively. Number 2, respect individual dignity. We have the right to disagree with everyone. That's just a right we all have. But we don't have the right to take others' self esteem away. We don't have the right to put others down, make them feel useless or worthless. So when we come into the discipline action of a school leader, we can show the student that their behaviors was wrong, but we don't want to belittle them and bring them down to a level that makes their self esteem go south. Number 3, treat everyone fairly. Our perception of people determines their attitude, and then their attitude will determine their behavior. So if we walk into a situation, we know the student is the one that gets in trouble all the time, they themselves don't think highly of themselves, so then their attitude is poor and then their behavior is poor. We must try to restart that process and let them start fresh. Number 4 is to be honest. Once we lose a trust, especially as a leader, you're going to be done as a leader. No one's going to want to work with you, and they're not going to have faith in you as a leader. And coming back to number 5, that draw that line in the sand. What this means is know what your negotiables and non-negotiables are. When you have that line in the sand, we don't want to ever get close to that, because if we get close to it, we have that tendency to try to step over it and test the waters. Sure, something may not happen the first time, so we go farther and farther, and then we go farther away from that north point of what is right. So why do we need a moral compass? Well, the survey said that 77% of Americans believe that a lot of our morals are going down, that a lot of people are tending to go towards what is not acceptable, and they think that it's okay. So what could help you is if you have a moral compass, this grounds your identity. It develops what you stand for and who you are as a person. It helps you support the greater good and support equal opportunities for others. It increases self-confidence in yourself, and this can be through self-inquiry, reflection, personal transformation. It also helps you to be a good role model. Giving tools to others to make sure they're happy and having a productive life is key. And it also helps you form healthy relationships, because if people know where you stand, what your compass looks like, they know that you won't try to ever cross that line and that you want to be the person with the good integrity and morals. Moral compasses also come with our moral emotions. So when we're making judgments, they can be based on emotions and reasoning. And a lot of times we hear, "Oh, I just went with my gut feeling." Well, that's part of your morals kicking in, because deep down, if you know your morals very well, you're gonna know what's that automatically kick of what's right and what's wrong. There are times where we have judgments that we can't explain why we made that decision at that moment, and that's called moral dumbfounding. The moral judgment emotionally and can't rationally defend the choice. And I see that a lot in my students, actually. When they make a decision, I'm like, well, why did you do that? And they just like, I don't know. I just did. So I thought that was pretty interesting that there was an actual term for that. This can lead to us being persuaded on what our actions will be for the negative and positive reactions we get from others. Some negative reactions we can get are feeling self-conscious about ourselves, getting anger reactions from others, feeling disgust about ourselves, shame, guilt. The positive sides that we could think of are that we have that sense of gratitude, we feel elevated, we have sympathy for others, and that we feel compassion. And that makes us feel kind of that warm sensation inside. And that is something else that a lot of people tend to lean towards when making a decision. Overall emotional reactions beat the logical reactions, and this is so key to know, because as a school leader, we can't feed on our emotions. We have to logically think and process our decisions and not let our emotions get the best of us. I know personally as a teacher, I've done that a few times, and I look back and I was like, I really wish I would have thought that through before I made that instant reactions with my emotions. One psychological trick to view immoral acts as not bad are when people try to role play, like, well, maybe it's not going to be bad because this isn't going to happen, or it just affects me and not others, when in reality it does. So I really like this empathy aspect. Barack Obama in 2006 said, "The biggest deficit we have in our society and in the world right now is the empathy deficit. We are in a great need of people being able to stand in someone else's shoes and see the world through their eyes." I believe this is really true. I see it in my school, that students don't think before they speak, or they don't think of how their actions reflect others, and where other people come from. So there's two types of empathies. There's cognitive and affective. So the cognitive is understanding another person's perspective. So knowing where they're coming from, understanding what they feel. Um, the affective is the response we have to what others people feel. So maybe we say something that was offensive, and then we see that person get really upset, they start to cry. Do we have that response of, oh, I didn't want to make that person feel that way, or did we just blow them off? It's like, I don't really care. And a lot of time, empathy is influenced by our culture around us. So, especially in my rural area where we don't have a lot of diversity, it's hard for kids around here to connect with that, because they're not around it. They just know what's in this small town. They're not open-minded to other things. And that can also be led to what parents tell our students. So setting your compass to true north, we must use the rights theory, and that means to respect others' rights. I'm going to respect you, you respect me. We must reflect on our actions and how it affect other people. Did our actions that we thought was right hurt others, and we are now feeling the shame and guilt about that? We also must have tolerance, treating others as equals regardless of race, gender, sexual orientation. This is huge today, and it's been huge for a very long time, but you see it more because of the media, social media, um, everything on TV. So these are a couple of things that we have to also help our compass when we're pointing it to the true north. So if you're searching for your own moral compass, if you're not quite sure, ways that our compasses can be shaped is through the society's norm. What is acceptable, what's not acceptable. We're finding a lot of that the mental process points us towards our own character, and that sometimes I thought this was interesting that we don't even know what the true north is. And this is because we don't even know it because we feel that the actual north that we should be at interferes with our life, and then so we try to adjust our compass to shape our lifestyle that we want. And we see this because again, we have the media, we see a lot of famous people test those limits and that they think that they are above all that. And this is why it's hard for our kids today because they are seeing their idols or their heroes do this, and it's commonly seen. So reading your compass, first you gotta self-reflect. Usually your core values are about 3 or 5, and they're developed in the early life. So pretty much how you're raised is how your moral compass is gonna pretty much turn out. Yes, there are some cases where throughout your life you will change your morals a little bit, but after you have your compass, you must understand how it affects your decisions and how you use it. Some ways that we don't correctly use our moral compass is we think of the conflicts that it might create. It might go against where your job wants you to go, or it might bring you benefits that you didn't think about, and you're like, oh, well, I can just bend it this once. So things to consider: analyze the consequences, side effects of the decision, who helps it, how does it help people, how does it harm people, how does it look in the long run versus a short run. Analyze your actions, consider the options from different perspectives without thinking about the consequences. How do the actions measure up against society's norm principles like honesty, fairness, equality, and then do any of your actions cross that line you don't want to cross, and then make your decision. So this is my moral compass. My true north is honesty. I believe that full-heartedly that you must be honest to get anywhere in life. Then I have empathy, responsibility, loyalty, and justice for my top half. And then there's my line right here, the line that I don't want to ever cross. I put pride and selfishness there because, when I'm making decisions, there are times where I think about my pride before I think of what's right. And so that's why I put these two closer to the line because they are more tempting to cross. And then being unethical, lies, and discriminating are my just absolutely a no. I'm not going to do that. Here are my references. And then my correlation, this assignment correlated with the 2 CLOs by understanding where and how moral compasses are developed and influenced. It helped give me the time to reflect how I use my moral compass in my daily life and how I use it as a school leader. The resources given helped expand my knowledge of how myself and others make decisions that seem to benefit them morally. My relevance statement: this assignment was relevant to my current learning by thinking how my moral compass was formed, altered slightly, and why mine might look differently than others. This assignment improved my knowledge of the thought process that I see daily when working with students. It has also made me think about ways my moral compass might be challenged as a school leader. My reflection: this assignment will influence the design I will make as a school leader by making sure I truly understand my moral compass, what are my non-negotiables, and how to make others be aware of my moral compass. I think it would be a great tool to use to get to know my staff and their morals. This presentation